Have discussed almost all the phases. Only one phase is left, which is phase H. So in last lecture, we have discussed about the implementation and the governance, right? Where we have, um, I think we have left with something. Artifacts we have discussed. Yeah, I think we have discussed everything related to this phase G, which is the implementation and governance. We talked about what will be the approach, what will be the, especially the artifacts, right? So these are the artifacts, which is the architecture contract, right? Compliance and review artifacts, compliance assessment, change management artifacts, where we are having the change request. If there is a deviation, then approval, waiver, and the trigger to, which is the phase H, because that is the change management. So then we are having the approved waiver or exceptions, then updated architecture artifacts, then guidance and communication artifacts. And yeah, so those things we have already discussed. We have taken one example also. Participant list also we have discussed. So there are some FAQ I have mentioned here. So you just, go through this. You can go through this particular FAQs once, whenever you get the time. And I think we are good to go in the phase H. Right. So now in phase H, right. So now, which is the architecture um, change management. Now, basically what we are doing here, right. So now the phase H, which is basically the architecture change management. So what we are doing that, see, here we have done the implementation. Now there are some requirements which get changed. So requirement basically comes from this centralized part, right? So it is saying, okay, we need this, maybe at some identification, means gap identification is there, or some uh, changes are basically required. So then this basically goes into this particular architecture change management phase. So this will, this architecture means phase, it basically ensures that we need to continue and deliver the business values, and we need to adapt the changing requirement or circumstances, right? So this phase indicates that whenever there is a change comes, so we need to take that change, and we can make those changes accordingly, right? So what is the key goal? That if you find some gap, right, since you have detected some gap between the approved architecture and actual implementation, um, which is basically required now, right? And you want to implement it. So that is the gap identity. Okay. So for that purpose, we need the phase H. If you are having some change management process, then it is phase H, where you will handle all the changes which is related to stakeholder preferences, priorities, or requirement, right? Then if you are having some enhancement, okay, some enhancement. Enhancement means, for example, uh, you want to update the architecture, you want to develop a new target architecture that address some shortfalls or anticipated issues related to the related to your application, related to your architecture, means data or business architecture. So in that case, you need some enhancement. So then this particular phase comes into the picture, right? So its main objective is that you need to maintain the ADM cycle. You need to execute the governance process, right? See, whenever there is a change management, it means there will be a governance process, right? Without that governance, you cannot apply the change management, right? So there should be a governance model. And another objective is that we need to meet the current enterprise requirements, right? So these are the main objective or purpose of this particular phase, right? Now, what are the steps which we follow, right? What are the steps which we follow to to when we are in the phase H, right? So as I mentioned, it is mainly focusing on the managing the changes. Okay. So first of all, our first step should be that we need to define the architecture value, right? Why we need a change. We need to define the architecture value, right? Which can be, which you can measure it or you can track it. Okay. So then you are having a deployment process, how you will deploy it, right? So in the deployment, you will implement the tools, right? To deploy your change, you need to monitor your change. How will you monitor it? How will you check whether it is compliant, right? It is compliant with the target architecture, right? Which gap it is filling. So those things you need to check that one also, right? Then third step will be you need to check the you need to manage the risk, right? So manage risk means you need to identify what is the risk and what is the mitigation risk associated with this change, right? So those things. Now, fourth will be uh, you need to provide an analysis for architecture change management. You need to analyze the gaps, issues, and opportunities for improvement, right? So those things. Then you need to develop the change requirement. So by doing all this in the beginning, right? So you need to develop the change requirement, right? And uh, change requirement means you need to specify the changes needed to meet the performance target or business objectives. Then we are having the uh, governance process. How will you manage the governance process? governance process. You need to ensure that the changes are properly reviewed, approved, and controlled according to the architecture governance framework. That is what we are doing in this step. Right? Then you need to implement it. Okay. So here you need to activate the process to implement the change. Right? So these are the steps which we follow in phase H. Architecture value, what is the purpose, why we are making this change? What is the deployment process, means steps, monitoring whether it is compliant with the target architecture? What are the risks involved with this? What is the mitigation process? Right? Then analysis for architecture change management. Then after develop the change requirement, manage the governance, and at the end we will implement this particular change. Do you have any question so far?
I'm good. Sorry, I'm good, Raman.
Okay, good. Now, next is that let us understand what is change request or CR. Right. So, as you know that phase H is triggered by the change request only, which requires the architecture to adapt during the implementation. Okay. So these requests can come from technology, business, right? Any of sources. So now, if we talk about the technology change inputs, right? So there is something which is related to the technology, right? So, so if it is related to technology, so changes are coming related to technology. Maybe some uh, old technology is to be replaced with the new technology, something like this. So maybe you are saying new technology is required. So that triggers the phase H. Now, maybe something which is asset management or cost reduction initiatives, right? That could triggers this change request. Maybe technology withdrawal, something you need to remove from technology point of view. Or maybe some standards get changed, or you can say new standards introduced. So this is the change request which basically comes from the technology point of view. If we have the change from business point of view, right? So, so business, right? Change inputs. So, so this is related to business, right? So new business development has happened. Okay, business development, new business development, or you can say some innovation, business and technology innovation, innovations, some strategic changes, right? Some strategic change. So these can cause a change request, right? So it could be through technology, it could be from business. Most of the time, it comes from uh, these through inputs, right? Now, when we are saying then CR, what is CR then in that case? So it is, you can say it is an extension or refinement of architecture during implementation. So this is the definition, right? So whenever um, you find something which is requires an extension or refinement of the architecture during the implementation, right? So for example, you are implementing a solution which was agreed on the target architecture, where maybe some new thought came, or maybe something which is business needs for strategy point of view, some new things, or maybe the old stuff is to be removed, some service is not required now. So all those basically comes under the change request. It could be a deviation, right? It could be a deviation, okay, which may be suggested by someone, right, from business point of view, technology point of view. So it may be something which is your business competitors, they are having, right? So for example, you are having, you are working, or your business is related to the um, maybe mobile features, and your competitor is having one feature which is not in your phone, but the price is lesser than your uh, mobile company's price. So in that case, you are saying, okay, let's add that feature. So that is basically on the basis of the market changes or competitors, right? So now you just need to justify the change, why you want to change it. What are the impacts of that change? You need to justify the change. You need to do the impact assessment. Okay. And you need to maintain a repository where you will say that, okay, this change is related to this request, right? This change request. So you need to maintain the change request with the change request numbers. So there are different tools like ServiceNow is one of them, or there are so many HP tools are available, which are basically used to track these changes. And there are different processes like ITSM process, ITL processes, which is basically uh, having all those, which is having basically these change request, how you can create it. So when we are talking about the uh, change request, so it can be created under phase F or phase G. Okay, it's created or documented in phase F, which is the migration planning or the implementation governance, and it is assessed in phase H, right, for architecture update or trigger to a new ADM cycle. So it is mainly used for the architecture capability updates based upon the on the previous, we call it lesson learned, and we um, we use this change request for decision making for implementation also. So main purpose is that a change request is to be created, and the change request is created in the migration planning or in the governance. But if it is, so normal implementation will happen here in the phase C. But if there is a deviation, there is a gap identified, there are some new enhancement or any extension or refinement into the architecture is required. So those are defined here, but this comes under the phase H for assessment, and then it will be implemented. Right. Now, let us talk little bit uh, more about its approach, change management process, right? So here, how first thing is this process review. First thing is the process review. What is process review? Here, basically, you need to first you need to define the change management process, right? How your enterprise architect will realized, right, that means when he realized that okay, these are the change in the phase F, he found that okay, there is some change which is required, right? And in phase G, you are implementing the normal changes, but when you come to the phase H, so your enterprise architect will say that when and how the parts of the changes will be implemented. Okay, will be implemented. Okay, and you also need to know the process that how a new ADM cycle may be triggered to develop or update the architecture. So it may require that we need an architecture vision is changed, business strategies are to be changed for that change, right? So it means a new ADM cycle is to be started, okay, or we need to develop. So how? So let's take one example. If I have a bank, or we will taking that example on premises to cloud environment, right? So when I'm pushing the changes from my on premises environment to cloud-based environment, right? So everything is ready as per the plan, which is the architecture vision we have defined, and in the phase C, we have created the architecture roadmap. And then we found that uh, maybe something like storage, okay, storage is very costly. The cloud-based environment which we are using, say an example, Azure. So now you can say that, okay, up to a certain extent, we are having the storage here, but for the replication point of view, we are using AWS or GCP, Google Cloud Platform, right? So this is a new requirement. So my business will go as it is, which is, you know, which is designed in the architecture vision. But new change is that replication will go into either AWS or GCP. So this is a change request which we are basically giving as the enhancement, and that will go to the phase H, and and then it will be implemented, right? But you are saying, okay, we don't have the storage. Storage is totally in the on-prem environment. Okay, it is on-prem environment as per the current design, but we need to switch it to the Azure and replication in AWS and GCP. So in that case, basically you can say it's a big change, right? Which will need a change into the new ADM cycle. And here we need to define the maybe business, maybe technology data also be affected. Okay, so that will trigger a new ADM cycle, right? So you need to just define that process. You need to uh, you need to establish a criteria based upon your business value to determine whether the change request is an update or it is going to start a new ADM cycle. Second thing is that this is one part of our approach. Second part of that, you need to see the rationale of your proposed change. Okay, you need to see the rationale for the proposed change and its implications. Okay, so you need to see whether it's a simple change, minor adjustment, or it is the incremental. Incremental means, again we need to do some re-architecturing, okay, or we need to develop a um, new ADM cycle. Okay, so those things you need to assess on the basis of the change request content and classifications, right? So these are the approaches which we use. Now, if we talk about the um, if we talk about the means what are the who are the participants, right, in this? So so in the uh, participant, right, if we talk about the participants, right, so in the any idea who will be the participants?
Um, the change management also meant by transformation, right?
Mhm.
Um,
So enterprise architect will be definitely be there, right?
yes, of course. And also
Yes,
the technology senior stakeholders
yes. So second is the, yeah, technology.
and business uh, st- stakeholders.
Yeah, so business, so all the domains, because we don't know that changes related to technology, business, data, right? So all the domain, right? And architecture board, right? Because they need to review.
Yeah.
There will be some more, means you can say project manager, operation teams, etc. So those are the supporting participants. All right. So now we'll talk about one more thing, which is the requirement management. This part. Okay. In phase H, what we are doing, basically uh, we are having the change management, but how the requirement comes. So requirement management phase, as the name suggests, so that ensures that the architecture requirements are properly documented, evaluated, and communicated through the ADM cycle. So if you see, it is related to the all the phases. So it is basically requirement can be business requirement, requirement can be technology requirement. So it could be anything, but it should be properly documented, evaluated, and communicated throughout the ADM cycle, right? So here you need to know in the requirement phase that the requirement which you are capturing, right? Where you will be storing that, which repository, SharePoint, GitHub, okay, or some repository you need to use, right? So its main objective, if we see that you need to sustain the requirement management process. Okay? So you need to see that all these requirements are effectively used in all the ADM phases. Second thing is that you need to um, ensure that whatever requirements you are defining, it is accessible to everyone, which is if it is relevant to technology, then technology people can get this requirement from the requirement for their business or technology requirement, right? And whenever there are requirement, then you can, it is also used for the traceability, right? So traceability from the organization vision point of view, mission point of view, business model point of view, right? So here we keep a complete set of requirements, whether it is related to business, technology, data, application, etc. Right. So mainly that if we talk about right. So if we talk about the requirement, um, you know, requirement, for example, change request, right? So whenever there is a change request, so change request is on the basis of certain requirement, right? So as I mentioned, change request is basically implemented in phase H, but we define those changes or document those things in phase F. And because of the change requirement, means there is some requirement which basically gets changed. So on the basis of that, we have documented our migration plan. and then in phase H it get executed. So if there is not, if we don't have the requirement, right, so we cannot justify that why we are making those changes, right? Now, next one is that when implementation happens in the phase H, okay, mostly when we talk about the uh, change architecture change management, right? So mostly the requirement change, whenever there is a change requirement comes, so that is implemented in phase H. Right? So now this is also helpful to, because whenever you are pushing the requirement into your repository, so you are maintaining the versions also. You are maintaining the versions of your requirement change requirement one, requirement means version of your documents, and you also record the gaps, right? The gaps for your gap requirement for your architecture requirement repository. So you keep those records. On the basis of these requirements, um, your target architecture is revised. Target architecture is revised. So so this is how, means requirement phase basically comes into the picture. Now, when we talk about the requirement, so here there is a important concept which is called impact assessment. Right? So impact assessment basically evaluates the changes or the new information that may affect the current architecture. Okay, so we need to make sure that the architecture remains valid and aligned to the business goals. So we need to see what is the impact assessment. So basically what we are doing, we are assessing the uh, current architecture first, the current architecture. Then we will have the uh, change in the architecture, that requirement, change in architecture. And then what we need to see, we need to identify the implications. And then identify the implications. Okay, implication of those changes. Okay, you need to check, do we need to revisit any phase, other phases, right? You need to see what is the priority of this change, whether it's a normal change, whether it is a emergency change, right? And you just need to uh, help this to your team or your enterprise architect is to have this impact assessment, so that you know when you are going to phase F or phase H, so you can give a proper justification that this is the impact and we are having, this is the plan for our for this change, means how it will impact to the different phases, and how what is the risk, what is the risk mitigation plan for that, right? So right, so now if you see these changes, whatever we are doing in requirement, so these are dynamic, it is not fixed. Your architecture, which is very rarely happen 100% correct, and you don't want to make any changes, so requirement will be intact in that case. Okay, but most of the time it is a Dynamic means these are keep changing. So you feed the requirement into your requirement phase, and whatever is relevant phase, that is basically get updated. Their repository, everything get updated, right? So this is the this is basically the requirement phase. Now let us talk about one more thing. We are almost end to this training, so maybe. So whenever we are talking about applying the ADM, right? So let me just go to. So it's a iterative process. So iterative process means that whenever we are talking about the um, this process, right? If I talk about this one, right? So here you can see that we are having the preliminary phase, then phase B, C, D. So everything happens transition, planning, iteration, right? After that, we are um, so basically what is happening that over the whole EDM process, we are going back to our, for example, in phase EVR, where we are having the opportunities and solution. We are going back to our, previous architectures, business, technology, or others, right? So we repeat, maybe we repeat the full cycle, right, up till here, or we, so, as an example, you are in phase, you are in phase H, right? And you need to trigger a change, and that change goes through all these, right? A, B, C, D, all this. So in that case, it is a iterative. So you are going revisiting these phases based upon the requirement, right? Maybe within a phase also you are repeating the things. You are first initially you thought that I will use storage type A, then okay, let's go to the storage type B. Okay? So this is called the iterative process. Okay, so it depends upon many factors. It depends upon that the resources which you are having, that is available or not, any uh, means business benefit, the scope which we have chosen earlier. So it totally depends upon all those things. So your your main motive is that you need to uh, define the iterative process as per your practice. Means whether, means it should be project specific mostly. Means if you are having the say an example, you want something complexity level. So you see, okay, earlier it was very complex. Now let's make it simple. Okay, so maybe for each project, actually it totally depends upon their path, their different ADM configuration. Okay, so it could be project specific. So this iterative approach, it could be project specific. It could be information specific, right? For example, you only need technology part to be iterative, not B, C. right? So in that case, it is more specific to that particular phase, right? So now, now you are saying I need a change in technology, I need a change in data also. So in that case, um, two iterative processes can run in parallel. Okay, so that can be also possible, right? Or maybe you are saying if once this change is done, then I will implement it in the phase two. Maybe some database is to be changed, their columns is to be changed, then application will pick up the data from that. So that is called sequential, right? So, so iteration can be within the ADM, right? Or it can be through entire the ADM cycle also. Now, if we talk about that ADM process, this ADM which we have discussed throughout our lectures. So ADM is not linear. Linear means sequential like waterfall model. It is iterative. Its output becomes the input for this. So it means this phase is dependent upon this, right? So this there is a input output relationship. So every phase takes the input from the its previous phase, and according to that, the plans get updated, right? Plans means C plan will be updated on the basis of uh, the output which comes from business plan, right? So the um, any, as I mentioned, any refinement which is required, it is basically, it depends upon that which phase we are making the changes. So we do the iteration into that particular phase, right? Now, we have discussed about architecture building blocks and solution building blocks in our previous lectures. So now architecture building blocks are defined in B, C, A, B, C, D, right here. And solution comes under the work packages, which is basically phase E. So first we need to identify that what are our architecture building blocks, and then we need to refine our architecture building blocks into the solution building blocks, right? So that is how we are basically uh, we are using these. Means this way we are basically applying the changes, right? So now that our main motive is that to uh, convert baseline architecture to the target architecture, right? So if you are having multiple target architecture alternatives, right? Say an example, you want to migrate your on-premises environment to cloud-based. So in cloud-based, we are having AWS, we are having Azure, we are having GCP. Right? So you need to identify first what are the alternative target architecture. Now, on the basis of your requirement, you need to decide that what are the features which we get in AWS, Azure, and GCP, and you need to pick up one of them. Okay, so when you are having multiple target architectures, so you need to identify those architectures. You need to reveal their hidden agendas, principles, requirement, right? And then you can just check it out on which architecture you need to go. So you need to you need to have some criteria. Okay. So you will have some criteria. So what is that criteria? That what is your vision? Whether you are going, if you go with AWS or Azure, and both are satisfying your, target architecture on the basis of business requirement. But why I am going with AWS? Maybe the cost reduction, maybe the long-term uh, or long-term commitment from AWS is or SLA is more. SLA is less in the case of AWS. So there could be a number of reasons, right? And you need to analyze those alternatives, and then you need to, if you think that okay, I need AWS and Azure, some features of from AWS, some features from Azure, so that also you can decide, right? So likewise, you know we whatever we have discussed, so we need to club them together, all these, and we need to say that we need to apply the we need to apply in the ADM. Okay, so I have I have mentioned many reasons. If you see here, applying. So this is the repetition of what we have discussed. It's just a you know matter of that how you will apply this. So I have given multiple uh, steps here, which are basically, or approach, you can say, to apply this in the ADM. So this is all about this training. Do you have any question?
Nothing specific, with the topic we covered today.
Mhm.
So, just one thing to clarify. When you say this change management, right? So that we are talking about the business transformation is both are
Cha-
same.
Uh, Not necessarily. Change management is something, for example, you already have a target architecture which you defined in phase A, and you followed that one. Then you go to the phase B, business architecture, data architecture, and everything. And solution is also solution building blocks you have created under the phase E, right? Now you have identified something which could be the improvement, which could be the enhancement, which could be the deviation, and some exception which you want to implement. So now uh, you need to implement it, because that is maybe your stakeholders, everyone is agreed upon it. So now what you are doing, you are basically raising a change request. So first you need to update the requirement. So you will say that there is a deviation, and that deviation we need to implement. So you will define in phase F, which is the migration planning, and you propose it to the phase G, and there you will get the approval, and then you can go to the phase H to implement it. So change requirement is it can be related to your business. Business transformation definitely that is required because we are transforming the business from the baseline to the target architecture. But the change could be related to any part of the phase. Means it could be technology, it could be business, it could be anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So this training ends here, but in future you already have my number, right? If you think that some topic is to be discussed, or you have some queries related to this TOGAF, right? So you can ping me anytime, okay? And the next thing to revise this, so it is very difficult to watch the video again and revise it. So this GitHub repository is there, always it will be there. And on my YouTube channel, so what I'm planning that not on daily basis, but on a regular basis, I will upload some questions which is more relevant to the practitioner and the foundation level, right? I'll start from the foundation only. So I will be going to create a complete playlist for that. So you have all, if you have not subscribed, you can subscribe and you know just there is a bell icon, you just press on that, so that whenever I upload anything which is related to TOGAF, so you will get notified. And those questions will be something like that. I will first ask the question, so you try to answer that question by yourself,
Mhm.
and if you are able to answer, then you can unpause that and you can see the answer also. So
Okay.
I'm just going to posting such kind of questions soon. So just keep in be in touch with that channel. Hmm?
Yep, sure.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, be in touch with me also all the time if you need anything related to TOGAF or any other. You are asking some trainings, right?
Yeah,
So if you need that one, you just ping me anytime.
right. So if you can stop the recording, I just want to ask you one thing. You know,
Sure. Just one second.